Today on History's Tech, we are looking at the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II. This 1950s aircraft holds the record as the most produced American supersonic military aircraft ever produced, and is one of only a handful of aircraft that are still in service more than 50 years after its initial inception. Let's go ahead and look at the origins and the development of the F-4 Phantom. Now, unlike other aircraft I've talked about, which was part of like a program to build the next generation of something, this aircraft was actually built as just an improvement of this one right here, the F-3H Demon. In 1953, McDonnell Aircraft basically decided that the Demon, while being a good aircraft, needed to be improved and upgraded, and they were actually working on something they nicknamed the Super Demon. The plan was to take the Demon, upgrade the engines, and actually create a modular aircraft. Basically, it could be fitted with 1 or 2 seat nose configurations, and the nose cone could actually come off and be equipped with a radar, camera, different types of guns, or even rockets inside of it. At the time this was going on, the Navy actually had 2 supersonic fighters in development, the Grumman F-11 Tiger and the Vought F-8 Crusader. So they didn't need another supersonic fighter. So they went back to McDonnell, said they liked the design, but wanted it reworked into an all-weather fighter platform. And this is where we get the F-3HGH. Now, McDonnell went ahead and built a mock-up, basically a wooden version of the aircraft, to show to the Navy. And the Navy liked it. The aircraft would have had 11 external hardpoints for weapons. And the Navy went ahead and gave them approval for development. However, right after they got approval for this, the Navy went ahead and wanted them to change the aircraft again. Because the Navy had the Douglas A-4 Skyhawk for ground attacks and the F-8 Crusader for dogfighting, they now needed an all-weather fleet defense interceptor instead. McDonnell went back to redesigning the aircraft and improving it. During testing of the redesign, they actually had to make several improvements to it. This included, one, re-angling the outer portions of the wings by 12% to improve stability during flight, adding the dogtooth design to the edge of the wings for improved control at high angles of attack, changing the angle of the tail planes by 23 degrees downward, also to improve the angle of attack. In order to handle all the additional weight, titanium was integrated in the airframe, making the F-4 an incredibly heavy aircraft in a fighter-bomber role. With these design modifications, a series of prototype aircraft were completed. During the testing of the prototypes, they actually found several issues with the aircraft, mostly designed around its air intakes and things like that. The aircraft was finally put through a series of carrier tests to determine if this would be a feasible and viable aircraft for usage with the United States Navy. After a successful series of tests on the USS Independence, the Navy went ahead and gave it the go-ahead for full production. And in December of 1960, the VF-121 pacemakers became the United States Navy's first unit to receive the Phantom. Within the next 2 years, 13 out of the 31 deployable Navy squadrons would be armed with Phantoms. Now, it is roughly around this time in 1962 that the United States Marine Corps will start getting its first Phantoms with VMFA 314, the Black Knights. And this is also close to the time when the Air Force will actually get their first Phantoms. Basically, this was a competition set up by Defense Secretary Robert McNamara to unify all the branches under a series of aircraft, and the Air Force really didn't want to do this, so they pitted the F-4 Phantom against the Convair F-106 Delta Dart, and after the F-4 won, the Air Force actually acquired a couple of them for testing. Interestingly enough, the Air Force actually designated them as the F-110A temporarily until the new tri-service designation went through and everyone started calling them the F-4. In 1964, the United States Air Force had its first operational F-4 units, and now all 3 air branches of the United States military had an F-4 in service. And this meant that when the United States did enter the Vietnam War, the F-4 was presumed by all 3 of these groups to be the main aircraft for them for a multi-role unit. Now, the reason they had this belief is basically it was assumed that because the aircraft had a massive amount of firepower capability, it had one of the best available onboard radars, incredibly high speed and acceleration, coupled with the fact that it was utilizing new tactics, they believed it would have an advantage over the MiGs. However, it was found to rather quickly not be able to keep up with the much lighter MiG-21. And it also had another flaw, actually from its design. When they had switched it to an all-weather interceptor aircraft, at the time, they believed that guns were no longer necessary for aircraft and that all combat would be done with missiles. So the F-4 Phantom never had a cannon or any type of gun system emplaced on it. meant that once the F-4 had expended all of its air-to-air missiles, it was basically rendered inoperable in terms of combat. So the short-term solution for this was to start attaching external gun pods and the F-4Cs, and then later on they added an internal M61A1 Vulcan Gatling cannon. With all of these improvements and modifications that continuously were made to the Phantom, it ended up being an amazing aircraft by the mid-1970s. Sadly, it became a victim of changing times. During the 1970s and into the 80s, a series of new aircraft were introduced. The F-14 Tomcat, the F-15 Eagle, the F-16 Fighting Falcon, and later on, the F-A-18 Hornet. As a result of this, the military began phasing these aircraft out. The Navy phased out their combat units by 1987 and phased out their drones by 2004. The Marine Corps phased out their last units in 1992, and the Air Force actually kept theirs around the longest, with their last combat unit retiring in 1996, and their last drones being retired in 2017. Now, this is not the end of the career of the Phantom. They were exported to 11 nations, and because of that, 3 countries still utilize them to this day: Iran, Greece, and Turkey. With over 5,000 aircraft made, being exported to 11 countries, and even being produced in a few of those countries, there's obviously quite a few variants of the F-4 Phantom. With this, there was nearly 50 different variants of this aircraft produced, and an additional 9 proposals for the aircraft. Some of those that were built are like this one, the F-4K Phantom, which was actually built for the Royal Navy to take off their shorter aircraft carriers, and they actually built 50 of these. Or like one of the most recent variants, the F-4E Terminator 2020, which is actually built and developed for the Turkish Air Force and is one of the most modern F-4 Phantoms available. One rather unique variant is the YF-4E, which is actually a prototype aircraft designed to develop fly-by-wire systems for the F-4E. Now, in terms of the variants that were never produced, many of them are just upgraded equipment or equipment that was never used. One of them, like this, the F-4 FVS, actually utilized variable wing geometry, like you would see on like an F-111 or an F-14 Tomcat. And sadly, there was even proposals for Super Phantoms that were never built. Now, the legacy of the F-4 does go beyond military applications. It was part of both the Blue Angels and the Air Force Thunderbirds demonstration teams. And because so many aircraft were produced, they have been used in multiple agencies such as NASA, and even a few have been found in civilian hands. Plus, the fact that so many were produced, this aircraft can be found on multiple military bases. It can be found in various veterans groups, not only here in the United States, but around the world. Meaning you don't have to go very far to see an F-4 Phantom in person. But there you have it, a look at the McDonnell F-4 Phantom, an aircraft that started off as a completely different aircraft and was supposed to be an upgraded version of that aircraft, and then took a life of its own and ended up becoming a really good all-around defender, interceptor, attack aircraft. And because of multiple factors, including the number produced, its survivability, upgradability, it has a legacy that's going to be seen well into later on in this century. But there you have it, a really quick look at the F-4 Phantom. I may do a video in the future on just its variants, as there's just way too many for me to cover in this video. But that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to talking to you on the next time.